All right, you guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't even know what number this is, but this is like number 5 or 6 of our on-air Future of Career Student Webcast. My name is Ann Flenner. I'm one of the FLVS school counselors, and I'm so glad you guys are here, either in person or watching us later on the recording. Remember, this on-air program is all about you guys. You tell me what careers you're interested in learning about, and then we hunt down these amazing professionals in the field, and then we interrogate them. We ask them questions about what their day like, what their life's like how they became who they became, all these wonderful things. And it's because of you. Because of that, we have, of course, our student interviewers. And today we have the incomparable Ariel Roberts and Lee Gillette, and they are here to be our interviewers. Remember that we kind of make this as if it's a TV show. I am your news reporter, and they are your interviewers. And so if you have any questions while we are going through the presentation, go ahead and put them in the chat box. And after Mr. Cline gives an amazing presentation, they're going to ask them some additional questions. And again, if you type them in the chat box, we'll take some questions from you as well. So without further ado, I'm actually going to hand it over to our amazing student interviewers to introduce themselves. Go ahead, you guys.
Who's first?
You.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ariel. Seen me multiple times. I'm back from last time. Chaos. I'm 11. I like Disney. There you go. That's me. All right, handing it off to Lee.
Hi, I'm a big bookworm. My name's Lee. All right. You do not get to know any more about me right now, except for the fact that I am 15. All right, I'm going to read the bio real quick. Mr. Cline's, excuse me. Sorry, this screen was messed up. Mr. Cline's evolution into the tech space all started with Tandy TSR-80, one of the first home computers available, that he first played with until becoming bored and then tearing it apart. I would probably do that too, so it's really expensive. From there, it was all downhill. Visual Basic apps, basic tech support, outside service tech, programming, database, engineering, remote system administration, discovering online marketing, technical background for large-scale online marketing efforts, process optimization, technical ninja for online marketing processes. Mr. Cline just also happens to be a rocket scientist. He received a degree in engineering physics from Riddle in 2004. Even though he is a marketing ninja, he also has a passion for going into space. All right, and this is where you explain a little bit more about your hometown and all that.
All right. So thanks for having me on here. I was quite delighted when Ann reached out and asked me to kind of share a little bit about my background and kind of how I ended up where I ended up. Hometown, I grew up in a small little town in Indiana called New Paris. And I attended a high school that had 100 kids in my graduating high school class. So quite small. There was like 700 total in the school. I grew up in a family of mechanics. So my grandfather was an automotive mechanic, worked at a Dodge Chrysler Jeep dealership. And my dad was a marine mechanic. He worked on boats. And so growing up, I really learned how to fix things, how to take things apart. If something was broken, you would essentially figure it out. And so problem solving was kind of like the skill that I learned growing up. And it was a very rural area. You know, it was cornfields, soybeans. You know, the big city had 20,000 people in it at the time. You know, I remember when a Walmart came into the area, and that was a very, very big deal. It kind of displaced a lot of the small businesses at the time. And so, yeah, it was my kind of my career path was to just do what my dad and grandpa did, was to be a mechanic. And so when I turned 16, I actually started working in the auto dealership right next to my grandpa. I was doing oil changes and tire changes and fixing brakes on cars and, just getting dirty every day and loving it. But I'd always dreamed of going to space. I would stargaze, all the time. I would sit out on my back deck at the house, overlooking the alfalfa field that was behind our house, and look up at the stars and just wonder, like, what's out there, and loved everything sci-fi. So everything Star Trek, that was me, growing up. And as I got to be 17, 18, I started to get burned out of working on cars. And I really felt this weight of, I needed to do something different. I needed to follow this sort of passion, this desire to explore. That's really what my desire of space was, exploring space. And I guess it was I just had that unsettledness when I was, 17, almost 18 years old, that I think I want to go to college. And, my family had, dad, grandpa had not gone to college or anything, and, very blue collar. And it was kind of a shock, not a shock decision per se, but I had just gotten this idea, like, okay, I'm going to look into it. And back then there were really only a couple computers connected to the internet. The internet was still pretty new in the late 90s. And so my guidance counselor actually gave me a big book of all of the colleges and the degree programs that were out there. So big old book. And I sat down and started flipping through it. And I ended up coming across the name Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And that aeronautical word caught my attention. I was like, I got to look this thing up. What is this? And I think the degree was aerospace engineering, because I was told that maybe I'd like engineering. I didn't know what engineering was. I knew what being a mechanic was and fixing things. And I thought, well, engineering is kind of like that, And so I used one of the few computers that had internet access at my school, and I pull up the website for the college. And here I see a picture of the space shuttle going up. And next to it, it says engineering physics. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I want it. That thing, it's that. I could feel it. I felt that love, that I don't know if it's like a moreness, it's an exploringness. It's like that fire that you feel inside when something just lands, And so I pulled up the degree program and I printed out what that degree was, the syllabus, and it had classes on there like space physics, quantum physics. And I'm like laughing to myself. I'm like, I don't know if I can pass any of those things, but I want it. And so I opted in. It was the only college that I applied for. At the time, they had this sort of early enrollment or early acceptance program, to where if you kind of committed to pay for 1 year, they'd kind of accept you regardless of your grades or SAT scores or any of that. And so I did that. And I did all this without telling my parents too at the time. And I got accepted. And I remember telling my mom, and she's like, how are you going to pay for this? I'm like, pretty sure I get some student loans, I think. And so that kind of kicked off my career direction. And it was really into a wild unknown, into something that I didn't know if I could pull it off or not. But my heart and my passion was just driving me that direction. It was just like, I can't not do this. And I knew I needed to get out of where I was. I had to leave the small town. I needed to see the world. It just was in me. And so moving to Florida was a massive change. Embry-Riddle is in Daytona Beach, Florida, not too far from the Orlando area. And it was very difficult, to say the least, very challenging. It tested every aspect of my character in those first several years of school. I remember calling up my high school calculus teacher and asking for help because I had gotten really stuck, and it was challenging, but I persevered. I made a lot of great friends. I learned a lot, and I started to understand what I loved about what I was studying. I think I had been given the message that, by the time you're 18, you should sort of know what you want to do and pick a direction and go that way. It's all an exploration. And, that's my opinion of it. And so it's really about, what do you want to do next? And then a couple of years after that, what do you want to do next? And so as I was moving through that degree, I was watching some of my older friends graduate and go work for NASA or go work for JPL and get the jobs that had been these dream jobs. And I really then learned what engineering was. A lot of desk work, a lot of sitting behind a desk and a computer. Well, I had grown up working on things as a mechanic. I wanted that blend of hands-on and building fun stuff. So I got a little disappointed in the options that were sitting before me as I got near the end of school. But in the meantime, while I was going to college in Florida, I would go back to Indiana over the summers and over Christmas break, and I would visit family. And I had decided, when I decided to go to college at 18, I also decided to stop working at the auto dealership with my grandpa and to get a job at a local computer company, because I wanted to be around computers more. I really love them. I love taking them apart, playing with them. Built my first computer when I was 15, maybe 14, 15. I'm just a voracious learner. I like to learn new things. And so I would go back every summer and I would work for this little computer store. I would be, working the counter, taking in, broken machines from customers and setting them up for the techs. I would do tech support on the phone. Every year I would kind of change positions. They would kind of, I wouldn't say promote me, but they'd kind of move me around in the department because I just love learning and I like to get really good at the stuff that interests me. And so the very last year that I went back to Indiana before I graduated college, so last summer before my senior year of college, I go back and I get the best job that summer ever. They sent me out on the road in my pickup truck to go into different businesses and fix problems on site. So I got to show up at a business that had all sorts of problems, and I got to be that hero of the day. I got to be the firefighter, and I fell in love with that. I'm like, this is awesome. And I couldn't get enough of it that summer. And so lo and behold, the very end of the summer, I go out to a company and I fix a problem for them that they had been struggling with for weeks. I fix it in 20 minutes. Just happened to be that I knew that right bolt to turn, bolt figuratively, it was a software problem, but I had played with enough of those things, kind of the nuances of the systems of the time, and the owner of the company says, "Hey, we want to hire you." I said, "Well, I work for this company. You can call them and they'll send somebody out. And, I'm going back to college." And she's like, "Well, we really want to hire you." Okay, well, let me check into this, right? Really important to me to honor my employer. I don't want to take a client from them, it's be out of integrity. But I went back and I talked to my service manager and I said, "Hey, Brett, I just had this happen, and all this stuff, all the software we were working on was could be done remotely." And I said, "I could do this remotely when I'm back at college." And now this is way before Zoom, way before, Facebook and Instagram and social media. Like, this was cutting edge kind of thing, to be able to do. And my service manager saw that opportunity for me and he said, "Instead of you continuing to work for us and doing that with them, you go ahead and work for them directly. But there's one caveat here. If you're going to take on a client directly, like a small business would, you charge them what we charge them." And my mind exploded. I'm like, why would they ever go for that? I'm just this one person. And like, I'm making, $12 an hour at the time, I think. And here the company's billing out at about $90 an hour. And I had no connection to the value that one creates into the world. I kind of just thought you get paid what people tell you get paid. You get paid what they say you're worth. Well, that's not the case. As you dig into business, you realize you get to define the value that you create, right? There's overselling that value, but then there's knowing what it's worth. And so what ended up happening was that last summer with the computer company, before I went back to college for my last year for my engineering physics degree, I fell into business for myself. And I started doing remote tech service work for a company, and it changed my entire world. I then picked up some more clients. Here I am back at college in my college apartment and finishing off my college degree, but I'm also in business for myself. Well, discovering that I'm in business for myself. This sort of fell in my lap. And I'm making more money than I would if I had graduated college and got a job like everyone else. And so I ended up in this position of being confused, in awe, not sure what was really going on, and not even really understanding business. I didn't take any business classes. But now growing up in the family of mechanics, we'd always have another, a project going on. It was a car that needed a motor fixed, or a transmission, or a boat project. My dad always had something that he would drug home that we fixed and then we sold. So I knew the basics of it, but I ended up working kind of for myself as this small little business, learning about what I was doing as I finished my last year of college. And when I got done and I had my degree, I'm like, well, I don't think I want to go and work for NASA right now. I don't want to go have that desk job as an engineer. I really like this remote technical administration, this remote computer work that was evolving rapidly. This would have been all around 2003, 2004. And so the systems, the technology systems that we had back then versus today, primitive would be a way to describe them. And so in any industry that's changing fast, there's lots of opportunity. And I fell right smack dab in the middle of that. And then from 2004, 5, 6, 7, I had just gotten a taste for doing things my own way, doing what I wanted, learning new things that were emerging out there, and then learning, well, who needed that service. And so I ended up building a little tech and marketing company to about 30 people by 2011, and learned a tremendous amount of things via the School of Hard Knocks, by the real world experience method, as opposed to in school. And it's been wonderful. I haven't used, that's not true. I've just begun to use my formal degree, not in the realm of space, but in the realm of human psychology. There's a variety of companies that I have now started, and learned. Companies for me are kind of like projects. You can turn a project into a business if you understand who needs what you're providing or what you're creating. So that's kind of the story. I can go into any depth or more depth on any parts of that. So let me know where you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Cline. That is awesome. And yeah, I think move into your questions, you guys, because it's going to build up all the things he kind of talked about for us today. So who's next?
Hi. Voice crack. Okay, hi. So we actually changed up our schedule just for you. So since you had so many interesting topics to talk about, me and other interviewers decided to change it up and go into every topic. So it's going to be me, and it's going to be back and forth like 4 times instead of just 1 and then 2 and then chat. So yeah, it's a little bit different. You're welcome. Just for you. So special. Anyway, I am going to be going into your space interest. So my first question is what kind of made you interested in space, and like specifically what part were you interested? Like you said that what was your outlook looked like you were going to be sitting at a desk. Was there a different part of space elements that you were looking for if you hadn't had chose your other path?
Yeah, great question. I think I had this delusion, not sure which it was, that creating and working in the space industry was more of a, best way to say this, more of a hands-on small team kind of approach, because that's the world I grew up in. I grew up in a small town, and to learn that space is hard and it takes a lot of people coordinating across a whole broad spectrum of systems to actually be in that industry, to play in that industry, at least in the way that I was kind of wanting, which was like manned space flight. Watching the space shuttle go up when I was a kid, and then getting to see it go up the first time I came to Florida, that kind of just blew my mind. And so when I was in college at Embry-Riddle, there was a degree program for aerospace engineers, or there's kind of like aerospace engineering, and then there was aircraft maintenance technology, where it was more about the fixing and mechanics side of aircraft and space systems. And so that stuff started to interest me a little bit as well. But from a pure space standpoint, as a kid, it was to boldly go where no one has gone before. It was to explore. It was to be part of Star Trek becoming a reality. That was the driver. And I love science too. I just really love physics. Like how does this work? And a lot of times how things work are not intuitive. And you have to really sit down with them and really understand what's happening to understand it. And a lot of people don't do that. They gloss over it. And so the more I've learned about the complexities of like what it takes to go to space and kind of how the world works, I'm just continually fascinated. When I was at college too, at Embry-Riddle, I worked in the space physics research lab when I was there. And we had instruments, scientific instruments called spectrometers and interferometers all around the globe, mainly at the North Pole and the South Pole. And we would look at the aurora, kind of the northern lights that happen. That's a phenomena of the sun interacting with the Earth's magnetic field. And so in that lab, I was super excited to start working in that lab. And then I realized it's also sitting in front of a computer, looking at data all day long. A little bit of using my hands and working on instruments. But yeah, that's kind of did it answer your question?
Yeah. I made it way more complex than it really was, but you kind of already answered the question, so I had to like tweak it. I'm sorry. I guess I'm bad at improvising. But anyway, our next question is, I see you very like, you have a big imagination. So what do you foresee in like the space future, like for space travel? What do you think is going to be in the future?
Wow. Well, we just started the commercialization of space. So SpaceX and what Elon Musk has done has just changed the game. It had become a really stagnant industry for a while with all of the government contractors and just the way the whole industry had gone. It was ripe for disruption, and Elon did it. And now he's reaping the rewards of it. I mean, it's incredible. More human space flight, more manned space flight. For anybody interested, if you haven't seen it, Inspiration 4 is a documentary on Netflix that chronicles the first automated civilians going to space that all just happened last year, and that was all done with SpaceX. So, you know, more space stations, a moon base. You know, Elon's committed to an interplanetary species, so we're going to Mars. Like, that's happening. And you're not gonna go. I really want to go to space. Definitely to low Earth orbit. I'd love to, you know, when it's there, to go do a hotel stay in low Earth orbit. That'll probably happen before too long. But a little stint on the moon would be great. Bounce around in 1/10 gravity. You know, be able to look back at our planet. You know, as Carl Sagan said back in the day, the pale blue dot. I think seeing Earth from a distance, anyone who has seen Earth from a distance says that it changes you. You see the smallness of all of us, that we are just this little precious blue dot of life, you know, in the universe. And I think it can really help people come together more as we understand the vastness of this universe. You know, be kinder to each other, connect more. So those are the things I hope for.
Wow, that last part was very wise. Love it. So now I'm going to pass it over to Lee, and he's going to ask you 2 questions, and it's going to go back over to me. So yeah, bye for now.
All right, so my questions are about marketing. My first question is, how do you like watch over positions in your company to make sure everyone is on task with like all the stuff that you have going on?
Good question. Yeah, so in like creating a business, being able to delegate tasks to somebody and ensure they get done in the way they need to get done, really requires creating metrics for success, right? So what are measures of success for this job function or this project or this activity? So in business, in my company, we work with our clients and we talk about them in terms of OKRs, objectives and key results. What's the objective? Right? The description of it that's clear and concise. And then a key result is something you can measure, right? So it's a X number of things have occurred or X number of products or units sold. So getting really clear around those concepts with what you're trying to do. And I say clear, meaning you want to minimize the fuzzy thinking, you know, less abstraction when it comes to implementing. And that's more of a business question. So I know you had said within marketing, did you have another component to that question?
I have another question. That was basically like, I think a combo of the two, right?
Sure.
That's what it was supposed to be, I think. Yeah.
It could be whatever you want it to be.
I'm just reading the questions that I have planned out here. So yeah, I think that was like supposed to be like marketing or businessing. Business, not businessing. How do you market your company for services that you offer and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's kind of funny. Marketing is about getting the message out there to sort of bring people to the stage. And the person on the stage is sort of who sells the people that come in the product or the service, right? So marketing is kind of the precursor to the conversation. And so there's so many different ways to get a message out there. You could put ads on Instagram. You could send out postcards. And depending upon the business that you're in and where your potential customers are hanging out will dictate what methodologies you use, right? Which channels you use and the kind of message that you use. The most efficient form of marketing is word of mouth. And the way to get that marketing to work is to do a really good job. knock it out of the park, right? You set an expectation here, you meet it, and you might exceed it a little bit. And if you can be consistent about that, then the word of mouth marketing will fuel the company. And you won't be spending money on Instagram ads or other marketing channels as much. You might still do both, depends upon how fast you want to grow the company. And so for my tech company specifically, one of the main methods that I used over the years was attending events where other entrepreneurial business owners were hanging out, and I would just talk to people. So I would go to an event where there might be a few hundred people, have conversations, build the relationships. That led to business. Do a really good job. They tell other people, word of mouth, and away we go. And so that's how we've done it internally. Now, most of our clients that we actually serve, we use all sorts of other methods to market on behalf of their companies, ranging from, as I said, Instagram ads, Facebook, Google AdWords, search marketing, SEO. It's really endless. There's an almost endless number of marketing channels that are out there that can be used to market.
Cool. Sorry, I was on mute. All right, now it's back over to Ariel to talk about the rest of it.
Yes, the rest of it. Okay, so now we're going to go on the self-help side. That was a thing. Okay, yes. We haven't talked about it much in this meeting, but we're gonna start talking about it. So give me a description on your position in self-help / give me an explanation on what you know in the self-help field.
Nice question. It's a very big question. So I said earlier that I've just begun to use my degree, my engineering physics degree, in the psychology space. The degree that I got from Embry-Riddle, the engineering physics degree, is really about bridging theoretical sciences, or the edge of science, and engineering, meaning how do we apply theory to create something, create a system, modify things. And about 3 years ago, I got deeply interested, but really it's more than 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I got serious about it, and it started really putting energy and time and money into it. And that is the mental health niche. I've spent a lot of time learning myself, understanding myself, figuring myself out. In growing up in small town Indiana, I also grew up in a family with divorced parents. And so there was a lot of back and forth between the two houses. And that caused me to develop a lot of anxiety that really morphed into social anxiety for many years. And there wasn't a lot of options, a lot of tools to serve me at the time when I was that age. We have a lot more now, but we also don't have enough. The phenomena of bullying, as an example, it has a tremendous impact on us, on society, both the individual being bullied and the bullier. People only behave that way because they're repeating what occurred to them, right? And that's a very, very common thing. We pass this down. And a lot of times the behaviors like that are passed down unconsciously. We're not aware of it. And it's because we didn't have the support. We didn't have the tribe, the community. And a lot of that has to do with how we live these days. We live more isolated. We as a species, as a human species, used to live in tribes, tribes of about 150 people. That's the maximum number of close relationships a human can have. It's a neat little science rabbit hole called Dunbar's number for anyone interested. And I think society is really screaming out for help right now, and that the mental health niche, the personal development niche, is one of the most underserved areas. And so psychology and helping that conversation is a really big passion of mine. And so I have two projects in that space right now. One is this little guy over here. You can see him, that stuffed brain right there. That's yourpetbrain.com, where it's all about destigmatizing mental health and opening that conversation up. And then the other is a nonprofit that I started called Humans Are Good. And it's around helping bring more quantified scientific process to therapies, to psychology, and making it less of this sort of mystical, you're just feeling that way, or, it gets abstract. Psychology is complicated and it gets abstract quick, and trying to help make it more of a hard science that we can quantify is where I have a lot of passion. So it's kind of my position on it. We need more of it, and we need it to come from a real kind and loving place. More kindness, more love in the world is what really will help, I think, make a better world. It's like the foundation to it, and we can all have a lot more cool stuff. And then what I know one little sliver of a sliver of a sliver. And this is something to share too, that when I finished my degree, actually before I finished my college degree, I remember sitting in my space physics class at the final, or maybe it was right after the final had completed, which was there's a whole nother story there that was quite funny. But I had this realization that I don't really know much of anything. I now know how much I don't know. And I now know how much other people don't know that they don't even know that they don't know. And this whole structure of like, wow, there is a lot going on in this world that we're all pretty ignorant to. And, that's fascinating, And a lot of that is I'm saying that not in the way of like, oh, that's depressing, we'll never know anything, but more of the, give yourself a little ease and grace when you don't have the answer. Like there's a lot of things for us to learn as a species and a culture.
Definitely. Sorry, I forgot I was interviewing there for a second. I was like, "Woo, what's going on?" Okay. So that's it for me. But instead of chat questions, I've been notified that Lee had a few questions for you instead of that. So passing it back to Lee.
Yeah, I was curious about, you were saying something about 150 like close relationships. Could you kind of elaborate on that? Because that actually seems kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. The concept is Dunbar's number, and it's just a measure of the number of authentic, intimate relationships that an individual can have. We look at it in other animal kingdoms as well, like primates, the number's lower. Due to the size of our brain, our social skills, that's what science has sort of shown us. And one of the values of that, when you think about it, you think of like a famous artist, famous musician that has, hundreds of thousands of fans, right? Like, well, what's a fan? What's a friend? What's an acquaintance? What's a close friend? What's a best friend? And you can really start leaning into, what's the quality of these relationships I have? Something that the social media tools kind of did is make us believe more is better. Like how many friends do I have? How many likes can I get? And we as humans have a chemical response to some of those types of things. It gets described as getting a dopamine hit, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's part of your brain and how your body and nervous system works, and the pleasure system of yourself. And so this is where the marketing and the psychology kind of tie together. The social media tools have been built and optimized for people to stay engaged with them. And so some of the mechanisms of how the likes work, how the shares work, are actually designed with marketing in mind, and they're a bit manipulative. They're not actually helping us as much as they are. The company's getting what it wants, which is more use of the platform, which means then they can sell more ad space for advertisers. And us users are getting that, excitement from it. We're enjoying it. We feel good when we use it. Wait, now I feel bad when I'm not using it. Well, there's a whole conundrum going on right now with technology, the use of technology and the consumption of it when it comes to some of these tools and how it plays into human psychology. And so it's a fascinating study. The ethics of social media companies has really been called into question. There's a couple neat documentaries out there around that right now too, that have raised the flag, because it's not like there's a single human in a room making decisions that are nefarious. It's the software we've built, the algorithms that we've built that are doing this, and no one person even knows how they work because it's code piled on top of code. So bit of a rabbit hole from your question about Dunbar's number and real human connections, but it like just bringing it back to saying, who are those close, intimate, heartfelt connections that you have in your life, and that they're really important. Those are the ones that matter. That 150 is what really matters, not the X number of followers or fans, or depends on which platform you're on these days.
So that 150, is that like over your lifetime or just like at a certain point?
At a certain point, yeah. People will come in and out of your life. People are in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. But the active connection maintenance, you could say, that a human can have, and that's not all, I'd say, like deep connections, but they're sustained connections that are authentic. And you could read up on it a little bit online and probably get a better scientific description than I'm giving you now. It's not fully booted in my brain.
Yeah, I was just curious about like the basics of it. That's really interesting. I'll have to look more into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things like that around psychology and human interaction, and the world is vast. It just gets bigger and bigger as time goes on and as you get exposed to more things. And that's, I think, the beauty of it too.
Yeah. And did you want to do like the end of it that you normally do?
I will wrap us up. Mr. Cline, we are so grateful that you spent this time with us. I think we could talk to you for hours and pick your brain about a lot of things, including the brain apparently behind you. So this could go on for hours, but we so appreciate your time. And I kind of got to do an advertisement here, because a lot of those things that you mentioned, all those different avenues you're thinking about going in life, like we have courses, like they're not on here, but we have psychology, we have AP psychology, we have a social media course that talks about the history of social media and how it's changed and how we can use it for good instead of evil. Like we have so many cool things. And then of course we have our CTE courses, from computer science to programming, all sorts of good stuff. And so know that if some of these things you guys like sparked your interest, we probably have a course for that, to just to delve a little bit, like Mr. Cline said, like dip your toe into it, learn about it, because then another thing will come up that you want to learn about, and another thing. And it's about moving forward, not staying stagnant. We can always continue to learn. And I love that. Ariel, it looks like you have a question. Do you have a question?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of obsession, but can you tell me, please, what the website is to get that stuffed brain behind me again?
She loves your stuffed brain.
Yeah, yourpetbrain.com. Yourpetbrain.com is the website that we have up for stuffed brains right now.
And brain?
Your pet brain. I put it in the chat box. I think that's the right
there you
one.
go. Yep. And I really like this little diagram that you have up here too. I know when I was first presented with some of the different technology stuff, information technology, information technology systems, like what's the difference? Like, how do these things stack together? She must have pulled up the website. They all kind of link together. And so I would just encourage anybody interested in these fields, it's about what interests you next. And it's okay to make a change down the road and to pick the next one. Just seeing like cybersecurity on here as an example, we are in a renaissance of cybersecurity right now with blockchain technologies and what that enables for the world. The buzz around Web3, it's pretty cool. The jobs that there'll be jobs, there are new jobs coming to existence like every day right now because of some of these new technologies that did not exist yesterday. And I was told that when I kind of started my career path, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I kept thinking more inside the box as opposed to, what is on the edges. And the edges are pretty cool.
So you hear that, Lee? Lee and I were just talking about like, how do we know what we want to do and what part of technology do we want to do? And like, it's always changing. And that's a really cool thing about this field. Most fields, right? With technology, everything continues to change and advance. So never a dull moment. Awesome. All right, you guys, any last questions from my amazing student interviewers? We good to go?
Not a question, but something to say about the site.
Do it.
Sibling torpedo. That is hilarious. You should not be promoting throwing stuff at your siblings, though. That hurts. But it's fun to do.
So
well, our goal with that site is to make you laugh. So I appreciate that.
Guess you did good there. There you have some marketing feedback.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. And you guys have on air will not be on air for the next 2 months because it's summer vacation. And I know you guys all have your brains in, hopefully at the beach or wherever the case may be. But we will be back with you in the fall for another edition of On Air. We'll see you guys later. Thanks again for coming. Thank you, Mr. Cline. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Bye.